best advice that I can give to any young female coming through in a male-dominated environment is to just be yourself. I remember back to a time when it was one of my first interviews actually for a really big bank in the UK, and I'd got to the final stages of the interview. I remember walking into the room and there was 9 or 10 men in the room and just me. And it was my first role coming, first real important interview out of university. And these guys were older than me and it was all men. And you get that feeling of imposter syndrome. If you've heard of imposter syndrome, you're thinking, what am I doing here? And you can really start to doubt yourself. And my best advice would be just focus on your end goal and what you're trying to achieve, and don't let those worries and fears and self-doubt creep in, and just be you, because what you might bring to the table that those guys might not is a different flavor or a different style of communication. And actually at the end of that interview, I was the only person to get through to the next round. So all those worries of, am I good enough? Am I old enough? Some people might have, it's not just about male and female here. We get worries about everything in life sometimes. And you've just got to hold yourself in a centered position to go, I have value in being here. I'm here for a reason. I've got this far for a reason. And just focus on that. That's a great question. And I think firstly starts with themselves. So I think leaders need to take responsibility to really understand the differences that a diverse workforce brings to the table. And I've seen it in many organizations where it is male dominated in many ways, not just the workforce, but the people on the board. And if you've got the same people and the same mindsets, the same style of working on that board or in middle management, you're going to get the same outcomes. And whenever I've gone into male-dominated environments where I have been that individual that stands out, that diverse individual, actually, I have brought something different to the table and value that they didn't have before. And I can think of a scenario where I went into the world of engineering, and it was the first time I'd gone into engineering. I'd moved within a company, a very big telecommunications company in the UK. And I'd been promoted because I went for it and I put myself forward, even though I'd never done engineering or operations. And on my first day, it was all men. I only had 3 women in my team reporting to me out of 144 people. And I had 6 managers working into me, 6 operational managers who were twice my age, all men, and had all the experience in the world. And what I brought to that table was something that no one would ever have thought I could bring in that first instance, which was empathy for the staff, great communication, listening to what their problems are and spending time getting to know the guys on the tools and understanding what is it that really keeps them awake at night and causes them problems when they come to work, and fixing those problems, which was basic, something so basic as putting a water cooler, the water taps you have in the office, into their exchanges that they're working in all day that are so hot. What I got from that when people doubted me is I won over half of the workforce because I'd listened and I'd empathized. And that's something called emotional intelligence that women naturally hold more than men. And I know the men out there will say, oh, whatever, but it is true. And we are able to empathize more with people. So for the leaders out there, if you maybe don't see the value in bringing women into your team because you think they are not naturally engineers or IT technicians, or, in the world of finance, sometimes it is male dominated. I've worked in all those industries. Sometimes you don't know what you're missing. So I would say for the leaders, educate yourself and then make space for women to come through. Because honestly, when you do and you add that different mix and that dynamic to the team, you might get a tension, but it'll be a healthy tension that will give a different perspective. So that's my advice to any leaders out there. You have to open your own minds to say, what value could this type of individual bring that maybe I don't have in my team at the minute? Okay, that's a really good question. I think some of the biggest risks and issues that leaders are going to face are one that I just mentioned about the fact that the resource pool, the flexible resource pool, I should say, is wearing thin for a number of reasons. One, we're coming out of a pandemic. Let's pray that that is what's happening. We feel it, we all feel it, but we are coming out of it. But we've had a lot of changes in society and human nature. People have had time to reset, really reevaluate what's important to them. You've had a pool of resource that used to work in the UK that have gone home to their native countries because they're not able to work here anymore. And you've got people that have retired. I've seen lots of people on my LinkedIn that have now retired because they've had a taste of a life where they can rest a little bit and enjoy life. And they've gone, do you know what? I'm in a fortunate position. Maybe I don't need to work another 5-6 years, whatever. I'll retire now. So that's left a lot of the top layer diminished. And then you've also got the people that are like, I just want to take a break and have a rest, which is where I was pre-COVID, actually, in a fortunate position to do that because I was burnt out. So the contractor resource and the flexible resources worn thin. Add IR35 into the mix, I should have mentioned this, and most of those people pre-COVID went employed. So there isn't that pool anymore. And the power has switched from the employer's hands, where they could just switch people out, swap people out very quickly, to the employee or the prospective employee to say, what do I want from an employer now? Or do I want to work all these hours? Do I want a better life? And so employers and leaders really need to recognize this trend. And if they haven't seen the stats that I talked about, they'll feel what I'm talking about. They're going to feel it and they're going to go, yes, I recognize that. So it's time to make a change to really look at well-being and the fact that mental health is on the rise. 10 years ago, it wasn't spoken about in as much detail. And I know this from personal experience of the people that are around me that have gone through that suffering. And then now it really is mainstream with social media and everything that we've got that brings issues to the forefront. And corporate leaders need to take a responsibility to understand that and to put solutions in place to address it and to help their people. So I would say really my biggest advice is just to educate yourselves, become more knowledgeable in these things, and look for other solutions to your problem, because there is always more than one solution to the problem. And if your current solution has stopped working, you have to find other ways. I would say the warning signs for stress-related illness, if you're a manager or a leader and you're trying to spot this in your staff, some of the warning signs might be obvious ones, like people are taking days off sick, they're not coming into work, or they're not showing up for meetings. I would say that people are maybe a little bit despondent sometimes. They're not really in the room, whether that's a virtual room or physical, because a lot of the office space workers are still virtual at the minute. So are they paying attention? Are they consuming information in the same way that they used to? It's looking at behaviors and saying, has anything changed in that person? Do I notice a different behavior and a different pattern in the way that they're working and responding? I would say that's a really good sign to look for. Are they speaking to people about their situation? Because that could be one way of understanding, is there a problem? They might have confided. Megan, you and I work together, you might have confided in me. If you had confided, then I probably wouldn't tell anyone. But if you're a manager, maybe they're confiding in you, maybe you're being told that there is an issue, or they just need some space. So I'd say they are some of the key signs. And I would say productivity is the other key sign. And we talked about it when we're talking about the working days lost. People don't just have to be out of work to show that there's stress there. They could be in work but not doing their job anymore in terms of being productive and hitting those targets. there'll be a reason for that. And as a leader and manager, it's your job to really understand what is the reason for the change in behaviour, but in a way that is approachable and caring and sympathetic, and not just assuming that they're just being lazy, for example. So I'd say for me, they are the key warning signs. There are probably many more on, various health sites that you can look up, but I would just say, is there a change in behaviour?